nutrition in the headlines. Now, something I am very, very passionate about, and I could not get over the response when I asked for kind of topics when I did a podcast. I'm assuming you all know the podcast in here. Yeah. It's just the big food for thought logo in the background. I'm always asked about this kind of thing. Red meat's bad for you in the headlines. Next minute, you should drink red wine, you shouldn't drink red wine, all this kind of stuff. So, introducing our wonderful panel today, we have, first of all over here, we have Jenny Rosborough. Now, Jenny is a registered nutritionist, author. She is also a specialist in public health nutrition and head of nutrition at Jamie Oliver. I've known Jenny for a long time. Yeah, known Jenny for a very long time. We have Lucy Mountain in the middle here, so you will also know her probably from her incredible social media page, extremely inspiring. She's a personal trainer, calling out all the BS in the food and fitness industry, which I think we all need in this day and age, so thank you for being here. And then Rob Hobson, another lovely registered nutritionist, author, consultant to brands, and I met Rob, gosh, when I was a student at university and I came to intern at the Detox Kitchen. Rob co-wrote the Detox Kitchen Bible and I interned with him a long, long time ago. Right, okay, so let's move on to the questions because we have very limited time to get through to everyone. So, should we be guided by serving suggestions on the back of packets? Now that's something I know a lot of people are very confused about. When you look at a product, what on earth are you looking for? And I'm going to fire this one over to Jen first, because I think this is your area, really.
Okay, see if the mic's working.
Yeah.
No, probably not, is the answer. I think that companies, they just have to make up serving size that's kind of sensible and something that kind of makes sense. It doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate for every person. Actually, what we know is that a lot of them can even be a bit misleading. So I've been looking at a couple of products recently, actually, a tube of chocolates that says on it, that got the calories on the front of it, for example, and it will say that it's kind of per serving, but it's not really indicated on the front of the pack. It doesn't have to be that it's actually 2 servings in there. So that's quite misleading. Another example is a can of fizzy drink or a bottle of fizzy drink, and there'll be 2 servings in there, but if you, that's not really that clear either, but if you're opening that bottle of fizzy drink, if you're opening the bottle of fizzy drink, then actually it's going to lose its fit. You probably don't have it over 2 separate different occasions, so there is a lot of misleading stuff out there. I think that we do need some indication of serving sizes. It's not a one-size-fits-all, obviously, but a lot of people do want some kind of indication. And I know that in America, they're actually updating their dietary guidelines at the moment, and one of the things that they have to do now is re-look at their servings and just increase it, because often they're much smaller than what we actually consume. So it's all a bit misleading. So I think the answer is no.
No, and this is just it. We've got quite a long way to go, I think, in terms of public health nutrition in getting a coherent message across. Yeah. Especially at the moment, it's Sugar Awareness Week, and that's something Jenny also used to work with Action on Sugar. And if you could say a few words on how confusing it is even understanding how to read sugar on a label.
Yeah, that's quite relevant actually, because on the front of a packet, for example, well, if companies don't have to put nutrition on the front of the packet, the good ones do, a lot of the information legally has to be on the back, but it's hard to interpret that information. So even if we do have it on the front of the packet, for sugar it will always be total sugars. Now what we actually consume are natural sugars and then our free sugars, which were previously mainly known as added sugars, but also include kind of fruit juices and smoothies, so the sugars in those. So it's really hard to differentiate, and again, you could have a can of fizzy drink that said that you're only consuming 70%, I'm making these numbers up by the way, but 70% of your total sugar, but in terms of that would include your allowance for natural sugars, so your milk sugars, your fruit-based sugars as well. Whereas in actual fact in that can, you're consuming much more than the free sugars, the type you want to reduce. So yeah, we do need, and again, America, they're talking about differentiating between those kind of added and natural sugars as well. So yeah, we need to catch up like them, and we can't, well, Brexit, sorry, it's like 10 a.m, 11 a.m. The positive is that is the thing that gives us an opportunity. So Not to make it boring about government, but there is a consultation coming out where all of labelling is actually going to be looked at pretty soon. Whether they do anything with that is another thing, but...
Well, I think watch this space, and it's something I'll definitely be trying to keep you guys up to date with. And if I hand over to Lucy, let's start with carbohydrates. Now, Lucy is prolific for, first of all, developing her own style on social media, but also trying to help us come to grips with the fact that many food groups they're feared, aren't they, Lucy? I think carbs is a good place to start.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's like, I mean, I'm talking from my personal experience, but growing up as a teenager, you know, in the 90s, it's like carbohydrates were like the biggest fear. You had to constantly like cut them out, and they were just generally as bad as like, I don't know.
I mean, I used to completely fear when I was younger pasta, bread, because you were told in the media and the magazines you read that they were pretty much the devil.
Yeah, 100%. I remember being like in a snack bar at sixth form, and you just see all the girls kind of like peeling away like the bread from the burger and just eating it in it, and like that was a normal thing. That was just like a normal thing that we would do. And looking back, you're like, oh, it's so jarring thinking about all those old habits that I think it's mostly women as well. I think guys definitely deal with this, but women are definitely they're kind of taught to grown up to fear this whole entire food group, which is mad.
I think it's almost a shaping as well in the industry, or the food industry, especially when we were younger. Now, this is a classic example, Yorkie bars. In the way Yorkie bars were advertised as, what was that? Not for girls?
Yeah, not for girls, yeah.
What?
Because women can't possibly handle a Yorkie.
No. But it's almost like food groups have been made masculine and feminine, which is really interesting when you look at it.
Protein for boys, like.
And do you find, Lucy, being in the fitness industry as well, that this is something, particularly carbohydrates, that there's still a problem with?
Oh, 100%, yeah. It's really difficult when I'm talking about, you know, because I do the kind of fitness side as well. I talk about training a lot with my community, and it's really hard because carbohydrates are so essential when you're training hard and you're doing regular exercise to fuel your body. And it's really difficult trying to unpick those conversations when you're talking to someone who, you know, has all their life has been taught that carbohydrates are bad, and I'm sitting there like, hey, why don't you have like, you know, some carbohydrates while training, you know, or just have a bloody sandwich once in a while, or like not once in a while, but every day, like just, you know, a normal thing to have, and it's really difficult.
I mean, I can vouch, in pregnancy, all I ate carbs for like 16 weeks, so, you know, they have a very important role. And Rob, if you could touch on why carbohydrates are so important for us.
Well, they're our main source of energy to start with. They're a great source of energy. They're also a good source of fibre. So if you're picking the right type of carbohydrates, then you're getting the fibre. We know in this country that I think 4% of women and 11% of men manage to achieve that 30 grams a day guidance. So fibre intake's really low. And it's really important, you know, it's not just for digestion, it helps to reduce the risk of colorectal cancer, we know that it helps to reduce the risk of heart disease. Touching on the bread thing and pasta, you know, bread and pasta are actually a really good source of protein for people on lower incomes as well in this country. The white flour is fortified with calcium and iron, and I think, you know, bread is actually one of the leading sources of iron. And with the carbs, you know, they can take as a protein as well. And just for energy, I think you can't just eat protein and fat all the time. It doesn't feel nice. It feels quite a grubby way to eat. You're not doing anybody any favours. And just this whole idea of cutting out food groups in general is just a bit odd, really.
And it does always make the headlines. And I know something that we're always drummed in, well, we had it drummed into us at university, was it's the quality and the quantity of the type of carbohydrate. So surely portion sizes are just as important as well, and the type.
Yeah, and it's this idea that people think carbs make you fat. You know, it's just like, if you have them in moderation, you know, anything can make you fat. If you eat too much protein, it'll all turn to fat. So, it seems to be in moderation and choosing the right type of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
That's the message.
And when we have Rob on the podcast, we discuss sleep as well. And there are so many components to diet. Now, we're not saying that there is a one-size-fits-all approach here. Now, of course, all of you will have different requirements every single day for how much carbohydrate you have, how much you don't have. It will all be dependent. But it has so many roles, like Rob just said. And Jen, maybe if you could go into calories and start by kicking off as to why they are important to know about, but probably not always everything.
Yeah, and just add on the carbs as well, because we don't eat carbs in isolation, so we're eating pasta with sauce,
Yeah.
we're having bread with butter. So this idea that it's the carbs that are kind of causing weight gain, it's not, it's the amount of things of food that we're having kind of across the board. Calories, yeah. So we do, in public health, we do need a simple measure of things. That does not necessarily mean that we should live like that's an absolute Bible for each and every individual. So for example, calories on packets doesn't 100% correlate to the amount of calories that are available to us. So for example, nuts would seem quite calorific in their energy density, but because of the fibre in them, not all of those calories are actually kind of absorbed. So it's a little bit, it can be a little bit ambiguous. So in that respect, I know in terms of like calorie counting could be a big thing, and I don't think, you know, some people get on with that approach and it works for them and it doesn't cause disordered eating and it helps people kind of monitor behaviour changes, and that can be helpful for some people. But I think if people are becoming kind of obsessive about calorie counting, then it's really important to understand that it's not going to be 100% accurate, so there's not really a lot of point in doing that. I think where they have a role is actually, sometimes we're scared of using the word now, we've almost gone to the other extreme, and people do want to be more aware of what we're eating. So I think when there are comparisons and you have that kind of information at point of sale, and not just kind of the energy content of food, but also the nutrient content, because that's really important as well. It can kind of increase awareness in terms of, okay, well, I've eaten out a lot this week, so do I want to kind of go for that versus that? I don't think we should shy away from those kind of public health policies. I think if we're very realistic about it, people who tend to have more of a problem with kind of counting calories usually know how much calories are in the meal, regardless of whether it's kind of out there. So we need to take a bit of a balanced approach, and I think we either talk about it in terms of you need to count all your calories, or the calorie word is evil, and it's actually neither. But yeah, so I just think we need to kind of be aware that, yeah, they're not kind of each individual's Bible.
Oh no, completely. And there are so many different approaches out there to nutrition, and understanding that food is so much more than just a number. I think that's something that's quite important. And I know, Lucy, on social media, you do these really fabulous comparison kind of photographs looking at numbers of different types of food. Because calorie counting essentially was something that you first, I suppose, became known for discussing as well, in a very different way to a public health message that as nutritionists we would.
Yeah, 2, maybe 3 years ago now, I would do calorie comparisons, and I'd be like, this food has this many calories and this one has this many, and you know, they would get so much attraction. It's kind of how I built my audience in the first place, but now I would hammer them and I'd talk about it, because for me personally, I really liked counting calories, but then I kind of went through this big journey and my content has shifted as a result of that, because I very much was like, calories are, I was really into it, and now it's like just one small component of nutrition. But I really like what you touched on there. It's about calorie neutrality. I talk about this a lot, and it's not fearing calories, knowing they exist, but being okay that they exist, alongside all the other amazing things that food brings us, including the fact that food tastes nice, and that it's something nice to do with friends, it brings people together, and it has all these other amazing benefits. So yeah, it's part of it. I do think the mentality of like, don't talk about the C word can be as destructive as, you know, counting every single calorie that passes your lips. So I talk about calories sometimes I don't, you know. Some people are really going through a lot of things and they can't even see the word, and that, you know, people have, you know, disorders, and it's a real thing, but not everyone does, and it's nice to have that layer. I think a lot of people who are maybe championing the kind of anti-calorie message, for a period of time, they did count calories, so they already have that level of information. And I kind of, I think everyone goes on this journey, and it might be part of your journey at one point, but then you might drop off and, you know.
I think a good point there is also about satiety, so understanding when you're full. I think a lot of people don't really get that. Exactly. So understanding when you're full, actually when you're hungry, and because the calorie thing is sort of a way of measuring for people how much to eat, and they also use that as a way of measuring satiety, but you need to get to grips with how hunger feels like.
Well, that's just it, Rob. And I was thinking about a message at the moment that seems to be very, very vocal, which is everything is energy in, energy out. Everything to do with nutrition is more often than not completely focused on pure weight loss. There never seems to be a focus. In fact, one of the biggest stereotypes, I did a post on it recently, that weight loss doesn't equal health, because I can't even begin to tell you, and all the clinicians from the nutrition clinic are in this room, by the way, as well, which I will do a little introduction to later. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. But it's not the be or end all. It's not a nutritionist, Rob. There's so much more to food. And Rob, do you think it's a message that has been very oversimplified? Move more, eat less.
I still think it's relevant. Calories in, calories out, but like you said, there is a bit more to the story. Because also, not all calories are graded equally, so it's the type of calories that you pick. You could eat 3 Mars bars, but the same amount of calories you could have something very, very nutritious. So
yeah, it's very fibre dense.
Very fibre dense, good fibre. Yes, I think a lot of messages have got a little bit, a tiny bit simplified.
Yeah, completely confused, and it's very, very, I think, confusing for everyone out here. And you need to realise that there's 2 things I think we're going to be saying today all the time. Probably the F word, the fibre word, and you are unique. I think they're the 2 common themes that I say on the podcast in every episode, and it's going to run throughout today. Find what works for you. It's the ultimate thing. Educate yourself, empower yourself with tools so you know the choices you're making and how they work for you. But like we've all said on this panel, if that's going to work for you at some point, fine. And if it's something you don't really need right now, then that's okay too. And Rob, if you could go back on a vegan diet, because it's Veganuary still, technically, and there has been a rise. Yeah, we are still in January. I'm really getting mushy with my numbers. 2020. Could you touch on, can we be healthy as a vegan, and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually really bored of talking about veganism.
Sorry. I think we all are a little bit, but we're going to bring it up.
But I will. I think veganism is great. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all of plant-based eating. I write a lot about veganism, and I don't eat a lot of meat, but I think there's a lot of people it just doesn't suit. And there are loads of different issues around it. I mean, first of all, you're cutting out food groups, so it's important to understand what to replace those groups with in the diet. And if you're doing it for environmental considerations, there's actually a lot of controversy around and lots of questions around how effective your vegan diet is for the environment. There's a lot of people that are still eating non-seasonal foods, cucumbers and salads all through the winter that are vegan, but that goes against the environmental thing. I think it's just if you're going to go vegan, you want to try it out, you've got to know what you're doing, you need to get into cooking, because essentially you need to prepare a lot of food. And you need to know the essentials. I know people that are going vegan, but they don't want to eat beans and pulses, and they don't really want to eat vegetables. And I'm thinking, well, why the heck do you want to go vegan? But how are you doing it? Vegan, that's the other thing. I don't like the food, the meat foods that are vegans. The replacement foods, I think, are a bit odd. And other things like jackfruit burgers, for example.
There's no protein in jackfruit.
There's no protein. So people are doing these replacement foods, thinking they're getting a good replacement, but there's actually no protein in a piece of jackfruit. So it's just understanding the whole concept of it, what to do with it.
I couldn't agree more, and we've got a panel later on today on sustainability where we'll be able to go into the facts and figures that it's not in my remit, to discuss that. But Lucy, have you seen a complete trend, or have you almost felt a pressure online from other people, from comments, to only post plant-based kind of items?
I think I'm lucky in the sense I don't post most of my actual meals that I eat. I just try and avoid it. I do get a lot of people ask me, "Are you vegan?" And I usually just say no. But I'm not vegan, and if someone asks me, I'll say it. But I'm not going to be out here. I just think in general, I'm not going to push any sort of agenda. Like the food I eat is the food I eat. The food you eat is the food you eat, and that's where the conversation ends. I support plant-based eating 100%, and I actually think it's a really great way to eat for some people, and obviously for the environment, but for me it's my choice that I choose to eat meat. But there is a level of pressure, and you just have to, I think it's good to be aware of wider issues for sure, But if you're comfortable in your choice on what you're doing, that's kind of all that matters, and that goes out to everyone. You know, you've got to, what you're doing is your business. You know.
Well, Jen, if obviously from a public health perspective, we know numbers have quadrupled of people going vegan. But there's equally messages about items like red meat on the kind of flip side. Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah.
Do you encounter a lot of that? And obviously working with Jamie Oliver, you must find a lot of these messages are very conflicting.
Yeah, I must admit, like touching on veganism, I always make sure, like Jamie said, I'm really neutral about that message, because there's this idea that it's inherently healthier, and I think that that's a huge risk. So, for example, you can get the vegan sausage rolls higher in salt, but you find a lot of these kind of replacements in the healthy eating section of supermarkets. I did some research on that, so I know that. And you've got things like eggs and dairy that are just some of the most nutrient-dense foods, like kind of out there. So this idea that you can have a healthy vegan diet, if it's planned well, is absolutely true. But how often do we plan our diet well all the time? So that's just a bit of a side note. But red meat, yeah. So as much as the red meat industry have been going for it this January as much as the vegan diet, I've noticed. But I guess with red meat, again, really nutritious. So beet imported B vitamins, iron. In some countries, it would be argued that they would benefit from having more red meat because they're not getting enough nutrients from what they're consuming. In the UK, generally, and this is red and processed meat, we're probably having around what is recommended, but that's on average. So that means that some people are not having any, and some probably are having too much. And the recommendation is, if you're having more than 90 grams a day, then of this red and processed meat, then to aim for about 70, which is about 3 thin slices of beef. So it comes again to, it's more like the amount and moderation. So there's nutrients in it, but if we have too much, then we do know that there are increased risks with bowel cancer, for example. So there's quite a lot of evidence on that. And also that a lot of these red meats are high in saturated fat, which obviously you can kind of counteract in a way through cooking it. So I think again it just comes back to the amount versus sort of cutting it out completely.
No, completely, and again, not judging one another on food choices. That's something that is so, so important. We have to be kind to each other to achieve any overall goal, I think, to be healthier, to help the planet. If you start from a place of compassion and kindness, surely we're more likely to make changes. And things like a meat-free Monday is such a good way to start. You know, I know what it's like with different generations. You'll have your parents, your grandparents, your friends from different circles, different networks, and everybody's exposed to it completely differently.
Yeah.
And equally these headlines that are very scaremongering, like you say, they pop up every year that red meat causes cancer, end of.
The problem with the headlines, and we should just clarify that plant-based eating is not veganism. They're different. It's the majority of the time you're eating more plant-based. It doesn't mean you're cutting out meat. But yeah, there was a headline, I can't remember the detail, but it was a few months ago, and it said something like, if you have an extra ration of bacon a day, then that increases your risk by like 20%. But actually, there's difference between, in science, and I won't dwell on this, absolute and relative risks. So basically, it might increase your risk by 20%, it might increase the risk by 20%, but actually the risk to start with was very small. So it's 20% increase on a very small risk. So we do need to take these with a pinch of salt, little food.
Completely, and I think Lucy, you see a lot of demonising of foods, and that's something you try and really counterbalance that you see online, don't you? Of people labelling foods as good or bad, constantly.
That's kind of like the fundamental of what my message is, and every piece of content I make, it is kind of that message. There's no good or bad. I'm like, how do I think the way to say this if it's good? But no, I often talk about, if you pick out one food, if you look at a chocolate bar in isolation, if that's all you ate every day, okay, fine, chocolate's bad. If that's what you have alongside, 3 really well-balanced meals, and it's alongside a really nutritious diet, that's, in my mind, that's healthy, because that means that you've had something you've enjoyed, you've had a diet for the day, your diet's been nutritious, things you actually want to eat, then chocolate's healthy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's all perspective, it's all context, and we just love picking out individual items and being like, that food's bad, and this causes this, without looking at the context across not only the days, but the weeks and the months and the years. zooming out, we'll need to zoom out a bit.
It's very difficult because it's one of the challenges I find being online as a health professional is I don't want to be judgmentally biased. I want to give nutritional facts about a food group like dairy at the same time as a more vegan-based lifestyle, and just give you an army of education. And unfortunately, labelling good or bad foods is not helpful. And Rob, one message we all see is diets don't work. And I think you're very well placed to delve into why perhaps this is around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, I think people have forgotten how to eat. We talk about getting back to basics, and a lot of people have forgotten the basic principles of eating. There's so many different diets out there now, weird and wonderful ways of eating, that people are zooming in on just really obscure things and developing really, really poor eating behaviours around that. I think diets have a place. You know, I always say to people that if they come to me and they want to lose weight, I'm kind of like, well, slow changes, adapt your lifestyle and your eating habits the way you're doing now, to make it small changes. But some people just want to go on a diet, and that can work for some people. Most of the time they put the weight back on afterwards.
It's 90% is the stat I believe we have, the dieters that regain the weight they've lost.
Yeah, and if you go into a house or something like the diet, there are a lot of diet books on the shelf. So that you're getting through quite a lot of different types of diet, looking for that one that will possibly work. But really the best thing is to take it slowly, take small steps, and really work on trying to change your eating behaviours for the long term than adopting these regimes that often don't work.
Because it is possible, and again, if weight loss, or I'm going to call it body fat loss rather than weight loss, is something you want to achieve, please don't let anyone scare you out of that. Because I feel like that's another taboo subject it's very difficult, but equally we need to embrace the fact we can be healthy at a variety of shapes and sizes, and there shouldn't be a pressure to want to do that either. So it's really embracing many different approaches, which is why in the clinic our nutritionist Sophie does intuitive eating. We've also got Faye in there doing weight management. There's lots of different approaches that may work for you. But I need to open up the floor to questions from you guys. So I think I've got about 5 minutes to do that, Lee? Yeah, 5 minutes to answer questions. Please don't be shy. If not, I can keep asking. But any questions from panel? You've got Lucy, registered nutritionist head.
Hello, my name's Bella. I'm a medical student in Blackpool Hospital, so one of the most deprived areas in the UK. One of the points you made about calories and how they're a good number to kind of base off, but the calories in one food are completely different to the calories in another. How do you help educate someone who's not very well educated themselves to pick the right foods when the easiest decision to make is to choose the calories?
Jen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think overall, and this isn't about disempowering people at all, but overall a lot of the work that I'm doing is trying to change what the food industry is doing. Because the food industry makes it really difficult for people. So if we're not given appropriate nutrition or clear and accurate and non-misleading nutrition information on the front of the packet, that makes it impossible. We want kind of the front of pack traffic light labelling so that makes it more simple across the board, all nutrients and not just calories. We want the foods to be healthier at source, so like a bit less salt with the high salt ones. So we're trying to do a lot of that work with actually changing, because I think we like to put a lot of pressure sometimes, well, not we, but the food industry answer is, it should be about individual choice. And I hate that choice word because we don't always have a simple choice when it comes to nutrition. There are options, but our choice is based on time, money, all the rest of it. So often the people that need this information the most are not the ones who are going to be looking, you hear it at the back, probably not. Yeah, not the ones who are going to be looking necessarily at the packet information. So that's why we need the food system to change. So, but in answer to your question, I think that if people are engaged, and lots of people are as well, then to just educate, and we have to teach people what's on the back of the packet in that case. But we don't want to put just the onus on the individual when there's lots of things working against us. I think.
Hello, I'm your #1 fan from Ukraine. I wanted to ask you about quality of food. In our country, we don't have free-range, organic, and a lot of pollution. So I wanted to ask you, like, how important is quality of food if you get all the nutrition you need from simple food?
That's such a good question. So is it important to go organic, Rob? Do we need to be doing these things? Do you want to borrow my microphone?
Yeah, sure. I think that there's a lot of research to show that nutritionally organic might not be any different, but obviously there's stuff used in non-organic food, so organic might benefit that aspect. But yeah, I think the quality of the food, I think you can get a good quality diet on a fairly small income if you know what you're doing, if you eat it seasonally and you're buying the right types of food. But yeah, I think it's possible to get, there's a lot of really bad quality food out there as well. The cheaper varieties of food, processed foods that are produced. I think it's just about cooking from scratch, finding the best you can afford with your budget. Frozen foods, canned foods, really healthy, good quality.
Cooking from raw, yes, not using
From
like
scratch.
processed.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
made from
yeah,
scratch.
from scratch.
That's the thing, I guess, if you're in Ukraine, I don't know what the actual policies are over there. So it's a complete different country and way of looking at it. But yeah, utilise cans and things you can get hold of as well. But I'd be very interested to actually look into what it's like over in Ukraine.
Got a very brave front row.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Santana, and I've got a question around Mediterranean style of eating. Currently, the NHS would recommend it, but you're seeing a lot around going towards plant-based. How would you compare it, and do you think there is an appetite to change that view?
I mean, I think
It's
kick
quite
off with,
plant-based anyway.
yeah, the Mediterranean diet contains so many plants.
Yeah, if you
in
look at
general.
the table for it, it's mostly plants. So you've got, and they include nuts and seeds and all sorts of plant-based foods. The meat is very limited on that diet. So it sort of is a plant-based way of eating, I would say. And you've obviously got very oily fish, olive oil, which is hugely beneficial for your health. So.
But then looking at discrepancies around the UK, like we had our lovely doctor working up in, was it Blackpool, did you say?
Yeah.
And for instance, how realistic is it for someone in Blackpool to adopt a lifestyle like the Mediterranean diet? So this is when we have to also accept the word privilege is used a lot with foods, but in order to make a lifestyle change like a plant-based diet and then the next level up of veganism, for some people, they just don't have the access, the education or the financial means in order to do that. But we're big fans on this panel of the Mediterranean diet, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Great, thank you. Any more? There's one over here at the back, I can see. She's got her hand up.
You're going to have to weave, like really. Oh, you can go around that way and then over here. Yeah. There we go. There's two then. So one over there, B, and just the lady over here with the gorgeous big hair.
My question is about, it was triggered by the gentleman's a point about the meat replacement foods. So for example, I think it's called Eat by Chloe, the cafe, and I don't know if it's meat replacement, but whatever I ate, it felt extremely synthetic. But then again, a lot of people recommend going there that are professionals. So what's your take on that? Like, how healthy is it? I felt unhealthy leaving there, but I don't know how
Yeah, I don't know, Gervais.
I'll probably still
Do you want me to?
But I think this one. Okay, so if it's just meat replacements, you get. I mean, sometimes the soy stuff can taste quite synthetic. I mean, I don't think it all tastes synthetic, but it depends what they've used as a substitute, whether it's soy, jackfruit.
It's like it's a fast food vegan place. It's like the equivalent. It's good because you've got more vegetables and things to a degree, but it's still fast food. If you look at it that way in your mind, there is a lot of salt in those dishes. I mean, it tastes amazing. I had a salad there, and it was topped with like chips and crisps. And I was like, this is great, but it was really...
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because actually it's quite easy to become an unhealthy vegan these days because there's been a massive rise in fast food outlets that do,
chips and Coke.
Chips and
Vegan,
Coke. Yeah, sugar's vegan, so I think there's, and this rise in processed foods and like the stuff that you're saying, it's quite easy to be
But
an
it
unhealthy
doesn't
vegan.
mean that the synthetic stuff is bad for you, can I just add? Because it's a good protein source for so many people.
Yeah.
I think it could just be different, a bit of a shock to the system if you're used to not having those types of foods. Yeah.
Yeah, vegan bloating. Anyone have plant-based bloating? I'm just talking about it. A lot of people on veganuary, and it's, the body has a bit of a shock with all that fibre and everything else, so it takes a bit to get used to it.
There was one over here, the lady over here.
Hi, my name is Anusha. I'm a nutrition student at King's. My question was that when you're educating people about foods, so you said that there's no such thing as good or bad foods. So how would you tell them something that a food is healthier than the other? So what are the alternative words for healthy, unhealthy?
Well, this is just it, and this is where I think we've gone a little bit too far, and it can be very tricky. It's about looking at your overall diet and just encouraging people to get more of we know that vegetables are probably healthier for you than a chocolate bar. It's about how you use the language, so you can use those words. It's about how kindly and how thoroughly you explain the bigger picture.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I do think that's a really interesting point because, again, I'm noticing that we're shying away, and I would never use good or bad food. Like, that was something that was taught to me by clinical psychologists I work with right at the beginning of my career. We don't have to use those words, but what you're kind of describing is now we're being so nuanced with everything. It's fine for us to be nuanced when we're health professionals, but the general public just want to know. Like, I kind of feel like we're going full circle where we're kind of making it a bit too complicated. So, as Ree said, it's about our dietary patterns. But yes, of course, there are some foods that it's healthier for us to have more of than others. So it's kind of giving a bit of context, but also let's explain that to people because we need to know.
I really like nutritious and not so nutrient dense. I think that's nice. But just in general, I think there are certain words which I don't like using. That seems like dirty, clean.
Yeah, what is
clean? Because they're so dramatic. They're just so dramatic. They're good or bad within context. I don't. It's a blanket. It's unhealthy and healthy. I don't really like. Good and bad. I don't like. Nutritious. I love. I'm not saying nutritious is great, but yeah, there are certain ones though, like dirty cheats. They're just unnecessary and they're just they're meaningless. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that is closing our panel for now. One last chance to ask any more questions. Oh no, we do have one over here, one over here. Sorry, two more. Last two, and then I think we get to
Hi, I'm Ellie, and I was wondering what you thought about the anti-diet movement, because I think a lot of the time it's really good, but then sometimes I think it goes a bit far, maybe.
Yeah, it's as with any kind of movement and group cult. It can get out of hand, and I very much get kind of put into the anti-diet community online. People kind of put me in there, and I, as much as I fundamentally agree with so many parts and support a lot of people within that community, I don't try and associate myself with one specific group because I think that just creates a kind of echo chamber. And I find a lot with these groups, actually, if you're in that community, people kind of turn on themselves for not being enough anti-diet, and you're not allowed to say certain words, and there's so many rules that come with that. So I love that we have the anti-diet community, and I think it's so needed and it's so necessary.
It can be very empowering for so many people.
And we need it. Like, it's about time. We needed that to come up and balance out all the
It's changed the conversation.
It's changed the conversation, exactly. But I think I personally avoid joining a group.
It's another label, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I just think sometimes, labelling yourself, it isn't always the most helpful thing. For some people, it will save them, and I've seen such wonderful results come from this community. But equally, like you said, there have been some extremely negative ones too, and we witnessed it all within the clinic.
Yeah, I really agree with Lucy's point about kind of being a good thing in that it's potentially moved the conversation along. That's what activists do and these kind of movements do. From a scientific perspective and as health professionals, it's quite tricky to witness and watch it happen, especially on the Instagram bubble where people like this idea that we don't kind of have to worry about kind of food and health and that kind of thing. We shouldn't be, like I said, a lot of the work that I'm doing is more kind of changing the food environment to support us. But
I do also think that we have to be careful because a lot of the headline statistics that are used in that movement are quite cherry-picked. And will constantly say the whole diet doesn't work thing is interesting. What do we mean by diet for a start? What we know is that it's weight regain, for example, but that is on average. So it means that some people will, and other people it will work really successfully. So yeah, it's about not being part of a camp as such, but just kind of what works for that person.
Okay, and there was one more, the last question that we've got over here. Lovely blue scarf.
Hi there, I'm Veronica. I'm originally from Czech Republic. I kind of started changing my lifestyle, or rather improving my lifestyle, about 5 years ago for a number of reasons. And going back to what Lucy said, it's kind of nobody's business what you actually eat. The thing is, I feel like in headlines and society we're living in, it seems like everyone kind of started labeling themselves in terms of what they eat, how they should eat. So you're either vegan, vegetarian. So when actually anyone asks me, because my parents and Czech cuisine is a ridiculously heavy cuisine, when they started kind of telling me like, oh, so what do you eat these days? You eat nothing these days, you constantly eat vegetables, and I'm like basically saying, you know what, I'm actually not telling you exactly what I eat or what I need to eat. I'm just eating what is good for my body, what feels kind of nourishing for myself. And if you want to call me anything, just call me flexitarian. So what do you actually feel about being labelled? Because I actually feel like as soon as you say that you're vegan or vegetarian, you're being very closely monitored. If it's either social media or family members.
We all couldn't agree more, and I think every single one of us on this panel doesn't ever disclose our exact dietary choices. I've never on the Nutrition page said I am X, Y, or Z. I haven't even said I'm a flexitarian because personally, you'll never know. And actually, I think as far as that goes, I think that's okay. And sometimes it's a much nicer way because you are able to help people from a place without judgment for us, which is important.
Yeah. We also, I think, as health professionals have to be really careful about, I feel quite strongly actually, I think Instagram has added to this, I feel really strongly that we're not kind of selling our own lifestyle, because even when I've worked with groups in the communities, you'd never be able to stand at the front and say, well, this is what I eat, and this is the exercise that I do. And even when people ask me, I dodge it. And media interviews, I dodge it all the time. And because it puts you kind of on a pedestal just by your title, and we can exploit that title really easily by getting people to kind of follow a certain belief that we have that isn't really anything to do with science. There's a lot of emotional-led beliefs and not enough science-led beliefs in our field. So I think it's important that we do stay neutral.
Completely agree. Well, thank you so much to our wonderful guests. Big round of applause.